I'm going to show you a couple tricks on how to fish murky rising water. So this usually is 50 cubic feet per second, and what you're looking at is around 170, and the water is rising up here. And there's lots of things that you can do to increase your odds. One is to streamer fish, and streamer fish, you cover a lot of ground and you're able to get your flies deep, and you're able to get your fly in front of a trout. Now, the one thing that you have to make sure of is you have to have some contrast in your flies. So I'm using a black woolly bugger, and I'm using an olive blossom, and I'm using a leader that is called a Versi leader, and it's there's different levels of it, but this one is a 6 IPS, which stands for 6 inches per second. And the advantage to that is when the water is rising and these little minnows, they're trying to dodge this faster water, and they go deep, and there's less friction, right? There's rocks and boulders down deep, which causes the water flow to slow down a little bit as opposed to upper in the water column. So when the water is rising and it's faster, these minnows aren't going to be bouncing around in the middle of the water column and up towards the surface. They're down trying to find slower water. So you want your flies down. You can use weights, you can use heavy flies, and sometimes you can use a combination, but I use a Verse leader to get my fly down. So I'm just going to cast across from me and just kind of strip it right on down and just cover ground as I'm walking downstream, letting it kind of sink, and then just stripping it across. And there's nothing wrong with, you know, making the same exact cast in the same exact area, because when the water is murky like this, the trout aren't going to see your fly that is, you know, a couple inches away or a couple feet away like it would in a clear water scenario. They need to see their fly, or your fly, 4 inches in front of their face. And no cast is going to be exactly the same, so feel free to, you know, cover as much ground as you can, but make the same cast over and over again. It's not going to drift in the same way. You can start streamering it and stripping it back as soon as it hits the water, or let's throw it over and I'll show you. You can just kind of let it dead drift on, sort of use it like a wet fly, kind of let it drift all the way through, and then once it gets down and your line is parallel, then you can kind of strip it back up. And sometimes a nice slow strip is all you need, and sometimes you need to go faster. It all kind of, you got to figure out what the trout want that day just through trial and error. Kind of let that swing on through. And then once you think that you've covered enough ground, then just move down. Even just a step down, you cover a lot more ground than you could imagine. Just take a couple steps here. So as it's kind of drifting down, I'm just moving my rod tip, just giving it a little bit of action as it's swinging on through. See if anyone is interested in it. And then maybe once it's parallel with the line and straightened out, I'll let some line out so it sinks a little more, and then I'll strip it on up. All right. Nice. Where are you here? There you are. Gorgeous little brown trout. Let's keep him in the water. So one trick is to tip them upside down for a couple seconds. That kind of calms them. And then you can kind of control them just a little bit. Let me show you what he took. Black woolly bugger.